Hello and welcome. I'm going to talk you through for the next 15 minutes or so about creating a very simple blog using PHP and MySQL. We'll be using Dreamweaver to create that, and I'm going to be using the server to go stack running from a USB key. If you have a Mac or your own local copy of WAMP or XAMPP, then some of these things will be slightly different, but the basic idea will be very similar. The first thing we need to do is to launch our server. If you're using MAMP or WAMP, then you need to go to the main control panel. You'll see that it has come up here and showing that my server is running. From here, I'm going to go into the MySQL PHP Admin Screen. Again, if you're running a MAMP or WAMP or XAMPP, then you should be able to easily locate how to get to the PHP Admin Screen. By default, the username, the master username is root and the master password is blank. Obviously that's not a very safe way of doing things. However, in this non-production environment, we're not going to be too fussed about that. You can see here what happens when you first go into PHP Admin. You've got a list of databases that are set up. These are the ones needed by PHP and MySQL, by MySQL to manage all of the databases. What we're going to do is create a new user. To do that, we're going to click on the Privileges tab. That was interesting. Click on the Privileges tab, and we're going to add a new user. We're going to create a user called MyBlog, and we're going to set it to the local host. We can type in our own password here, or we can use the password generator. You can see that it creates a long, secure password, and we can copy that password to use later on. What I'm going to do is just create a quick, just going to use Notepad and just store that password for us to use later on. So we've got our blog, that's the name of our user. On the local host we've got a password. What we're going to do now is that we're going to have PHP MyAdmin automatically create a database for us with the same name, in other words MyBlog. We can already have set up the database and we can add new users to it if we want to, that's fine. But this is a very simple way of setting up. So having ticked that box, I'm going to go down here and click on Go. And you can see that I've added a new user. It's created a user called MyBlog. It's created a new database called MyBlog, and it's given the user MyBlog access to that database. You can see over here that we have our new database. We're going to click on that now and look at what's happening in here. If we click on privileges, we should see, well, we should have seen that the user that has access to MyBlog is in fact the user called MyBlog, but that's not showing there. Don't know. Anyway, we're going to create a new table here, and we're going to call it TBL blog. TBL being our little truncated abbreviation for table, and then starting with a capital B, and for all of you computer boffins out there, we call this Hungarian notation. And we're going to have 4 fields. So this is where we're going to create our field definitions for our database. The first one we're going to call ID for identification, and it's going to be of type integer, so in other words whole numbers. We can leave all of this blank until we get to this point here. We're going to make it our primary key. That means for a database field to be the primary key, that means there can only be one and only one instance of every number of that ID in this table. So the first record, for example, will be record number 1. There can only be one record with an ID of 1. We're also going to tick this box here. If I hover over AI, that's short for auto increment. That means every time I create a new record in this table, the MySQL engine will automatically generate the next number in order and allocate that to this field. The next field we're going to use is called entry. Entry is where we're going to actually enter our blog entry, obviously, and we're going to use the data type varchar. That is short for variable character. Char for character. Obviously, one character is one letter, an A or a question mark or something. And the var here of a variable is used for something called Unicode. Obviously, in English and other similar languages, where every letter, an A or a B or a full stop, can all be generated using 1 byte of computer memory. In other languages such as Japanese or Chinese, we can need 2 bytes to represent just 1 character. The varchar data type handles for us in the background whether or not we need 1 byte or 2 bytes, depending on which language is chosen. And you can see down here that there's a whole lot of different language types that you can choose, and depending on which one you choose, if you choose the varchar data type, the database handles that for you. For us, it would make no difference if we chose the type char or text. They're very similar, but we're just going to use varchar. You can see that's one of the defaults near the top. For people doing IT in Victoria, type text for apps, or string for, you can see this word string there here, for software development, but still we're going to call this varchar. We're going to set the maximum length at 256 characters just because we're not going to have very long blog entries, obviously. We're going to leave the rest of this blank. Our third field is going to be called entry date, and we can either use these underscores, or I could go back to using my camel case and put a capital D in here. Okay, and I'm going to set the type as type date, and I don't need to add any of these. It will sort that out for us. And the final field we're going to use is something called a date time stamp, DTS. We're going to give it a type time stamp. We're going to set the default value to the current timestamp, and we're going to set an attribute for on update current timestamp. Now what this is going to record is every time you create a new record or edit a record in this table, then that record will be stamped with the most recent date and time. So you'll be able to keep track of when this entry was created or edited. That's really important, particularly if you have a lot of users using the same databases. You might also have last user to go along with a current timestamp, and then you can interrogate and find out who was the last user and when they edited that record. Having put in my 4 fields and set up the data types, I've created my primary key. I'm going to click on save now, and you can see that it's created a table for us with these 4 fields, and this is my configuration. You can see that I have an index down here, which is the primary key, on the field ID. If I go to browse, obviously there is no data, so I can't do that. So let's insert our first record. Now, because the ID field is auto increment, I don't need to add anything there. Let's put in our first blog entry. Oh, there it is. This is a test blog entry. It's very exciting. And the date, we can either type the date in here, or we can use the date time picker to select the date. Notice the date format is year-month-day, and that is the format that a date is stored in a MySQL database. We'll need that information later on. So I can click on Go now, and you can see that it's inserted one row and it has an ID of 1. That was our auto increment number. If we go and have a look at Browse, now we can see this one entry in our database. So it has an ID of 1. It has, here's our blog entry, here's our entry date that we entered, and here is the date timestamp that was automatically entered in when we clicked on Save. If I go in and edit this record now and click on Save again, you can see now this has been updated. Okay, now that we have our database set up, we can go into Dreamweaver and start creating our blog.